We're middle of chapter 4, the fifth part, that discusses the commandments that affect other people. It means how you have bitachon in how you're supposed to apply your trust in Hashem when it comes to mitzvos that affect other people. I'm going to go back a drop. We spoke in the beginning of it. He describes the mitzvahs, for instance. He says tzedakah, charity, or paying back loans, or other things. He goes into a whole list of things that he says of mitzvahs that are conditioned on someone else. Like we said last week, that tzedakah has to go to someone eventually, even if you have to give it right away. That idea is there has to be someone that's part of it on the other side. So he says like this. I'm going to go back a drop, just a few lines. He says, "Vihin." It's in the English. It would be part 4, chapter 20, middle of the page. So part 2, 20 commandments that affect other people. In the middle of the page, that starts off. What is the proper way to have bitachon regarding these? The person should have, etc. Like this. The proper way, who a person has to have trust in Hashem and all these things, meaning things that are connected and involving mitzvahs that are connected to other people. Teaching someone, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like we said last week, teaching someone, as great as that is, at the end of the day, is you have to have someone else to teach, or helping the sick. I mean, you know what it says? It says that Avram Avinu was sick. So Hashem didn't let anyone come near him. He kept people away from him. So he shouldn't. So he was in tsar. He was in pain after the circumcision. God knew that if Avram knew that there were people needing help, Avram would pay attention to the fact that he's in pain. So God kept everyone away, but that wasn't. He was causing more pain to Avram, because Avram, being a chesed is the condition of chesed is that chesed has to have someone else, and chesed, and he didn't have anyone to do kindness to. It's not enough that Avram wanted to be kind. He had to actually be kind. So he says like this. He says, the proper way, he says, of liftarech Hashem Yisrael b'chozeh. V'shiyah adam yoyzim asiyas kol ha'maisim l'ol v'daimeim. Yeah, again, you have to put in all your efforts. You have to choose what you're supposed to be doing, and you have to do it with all your efforts, like we said in chapter 4, in part 4, in part 4 in chapter 4, like we said before, in the fourth part of Bitachon, which was the person in their Bitachon, in their own avoda, between Ben Adam Lamakim, between Hashem and God. I mean, a God and a person, that you have to. It's not enough to say I trust God. You have to actually yourself go in and do the mitzvah, make the strategy, not just want to do the mitzvah, but actually strategize and make sure that you have the conditions to be able to do the mitzvah. Is achayvas habechira, if the things that we have to make choices on. That's the same thing when it comes to someone else. Not enough to say God's going to help me. You have to figure out how you could help another person, right? If you're going to be, if the mitzvah that's conditioned is helping another person, is what are you doing about it to be helping another person? And here he says, this is where we're holding last week. It's because it's very important to understand. He says that the only reason why we have this need and the doing of a mitzvah that engages another person and is with another person is a way for us to come close to Hashem. There's no other agenda. There's nothing else that we're trying to accomplish over here. Like he says, Chashiv Shehudi Yiftach B'toichai Toida'a Nechoina V'yafnim Shechoiva B'chir B'mitzvahs Mitalas Alav L'matara Achas Berura L'Skav Hashem. A person has to make the choice that the only reason he's doing a mitzvah is for that person to come closer to God. And when, by the way, it's not a small idea. It's an amazing idea, because when one of the challenges of a mitzvah that involves another person, when you're davening yourself and you're learning yourself and you're doing your own spiritual mitzvahs yourself, so it's between you and God. When there involves another person, if it's not pure, means your intentions are not pure. So other people have different temperaments. Other people react differently. Other people are if you want to thank you, and you're not going to get to thank you. So then you're saying, well, this person's not appreciating what I'm doing for them. That's not the way to go. Because it says the only reason you're doing it is not because someone else should acknowledge you or someone else should give you a yashakoach or for your name to be mentioned. It's the only reason you're doing is the skar of Hashem levad, is for the only reason is to get closer to Hashem. Not to be praised or to be honored, or to get any other kind of benefits. Here he says something else. A lot of people, these are not interesting. These are not easy things to navigate, because part of leadership is a lot of people want to be in charge, right? Everyone wants to be in charge. Everyone wants to be the person that can help others, whether they don't trust other people, which is also not so cool, and also that they don't they just want to be the person, and it doesn't mean they're going to do a bad job. There could be that they're excellent. They'll say, I need to be in charge, and because I'm the only person that can do it. It could be that's true. That someone else would be in charge, it wouldn't end up being as well as done, as organized, etc. But he says a person that cannot be your motivation. You can't be motivated. And some people need to run things not just so they should be honored. There's a different thing going on. Some people feel that the only way they feel present, they feel present, or they feel accomplished, is if they're running it. If they're just being part of a story, they don't feel accomplished. That's what drives them. The drive that keeps their energy, that keeps them going, is the fact that they're running things. So he says, that can't be part of your motivation. And that's not an easy one, because a lot of people go through that where they mean good and they do good. It's not even a contradiction. It's not like the outcome is bad. It's not like there's something bad happening. But he says what drives you has to be the skar of Hashem. And therefore, it's sometimes you have to take the humble pill. The humble pill. Sometimes you have to know when it's time to step down, and you have to always ask yourself. It says Moshe Rabbeinu, when Korach came to Moshe, it says, comes to Moshe, and it says, but what does he say to Moshe? He says in all nice words, he says the famous, who made you in charge, right? That's what he says. Why are you in charge? Why are you and your family all the people in charge, right? And Korach was saying, you're the melech, your brother's the high priest, your nephew is the skan, your other nephews are the young priests. Another cousin runs the tribe of Levi. Everyone, he felt, Itamar was in charge of the Levium. Biadi Tamar, right? All the jobs are being given out to the family of Moshe Rabbeinu. So what Korach say? Who made you in charge? Why are you in charge? Everyone's Kaddish, everyone's holy, everyone stood in Mount Sinai. Share the jobs with other people. He didn't care about the next guy. Nothing's changed in 3,000 years where people have their own agenda. At the end of the day, the agenda is really about them. They use other people so that they could camouflage the agenda that should look like they're coming from an honest place. Yeravim ben Nevat did the same thing. When Yeravim ben Nevat comes and challenges King Solomon to about his kingship, what was at the end of the day? He wanted to be king. It wasn't that he was so worried about the other Jewish people. You always have to ask yourself, when people are running and screaming and protest, whenever the issue is at hand, you have to ask yourself, what's the real agenda? Who's benefiting? Who's behind? Who's going to benefit from all this? So it says So it says, Moshe Rabbeinu heard from Korach, who made you in charge? It says Vayipal Fanav, he fell on his face. He fell down. Why did he fall down? And then he speaks to Korach. Why does he fall down first? It's brought down. At first he wanted to he did a quick evaluation. Maybe Korach's right. Maybe it's about him. Maybe it's not about God getting God's job done. Maybe it's really about him and his family. So first he made a quick evaluation, an honest evaluation, and he knew it wasn't true. Right? Everyone knows Moshe Rabbeinu only suffered as leader, but he still did a quick math to make sure that it was true. And then he came up and he fought Korach and says it's not true. This is what God wants. And then everything continued as the story with Korach happened. So that can't be a motivation. The only motivation is the skar of Hashem, to get close to Hashem. V'yiftach Hashem. And a person has to have trust. That V'yiftach Hashem, you have to have trust in the Pu'ula, what's going to happen. What are you trying to do? Meaning to say, like he says, that all the planning that you've done to actualize this mitzvah, right? A mitzvah, especially when it's two people involved, There's other there's variables. It's not you're dependent on others, right? In the success of the mitzvah happening, you're dependent on others. So you have to have bitachon. Hashem is going to help you with that success. Mamish, like if an event is going to work, there's on all levels, whether you're in shlichus, whether you're in everything depends, and the success of it is not just about and also you have to remember something else. The lack of success of a good idea is not because the idea was bad necessarily, and it's not also because you did something wrong. That's if it's about you, then again we wouldn't say bitachon. So you have to have trust that you've done everything you can. But if it's going to actualize the way you want it to, in a positive way, the way you understand it should, it's up to God at the end. And if it doesn't, could be God saw things differently. For whatever reason, you may understand, you may not understand. As God wants it to be. She's chan in the fun of, and he says something else. Here he says an interesting thing. There has to be a tefillah. Ischanan from the word is one of the expressions of prayer. That after you plead to God, that you're asking Hashem that He should help you. After you've made the right choices to do this mitzvah. And the proper planning, the person should daven. Place your trust in God. That He should bless you, that you should be successful. And here this is an amazing thing that he doesn't just say that you should be bitachon. And first of all, he says that the tefillah comes before the bitachon, meaning to say that just like there's different components of preparation. Where do we know this from? We know this from our father Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu is faced with Esav, 400 men, and it says he does what he has to do. He goes out and he gives gifts. And then he divides and he prays. That was part of it. It says he does. The Torah tells us he did different parts of his planning of engaging Esav. One of the planning was the prayer part of it. So here he says, So he says, I'm just going to read the commentary on the side from my publication. He says, so when it comes to mitzvos that are connected between man and God, I mean, he's not involving another person, which is what part 4 of chapter 4 was. Those things also apply to when you engage another person in a mitzvah, meaning the first 2 steps of not having bitachon in what you should be doing, or in it, you have to do all the work, make the bechira, make the preparation. That all applies to engaging other people as well in a mitzvah. What Hashem wants from us is clear. Go out there and do the mitzvah, right? Kisavo elamakom, go to the place, like the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov of this week's parsha. Is kavuo bilti mishtana, that doesn't change. That means you have to put in your efforts, make the choices, make the planning. And after you've completed the things that you have to prepare, then you're not supposed to be concerned anymore. Then you have to have bitachon. After you know for sure you've completed everything you have to do, so then you have to have the absolute bitachon on Hashem. Sheyeh be'ezrei, that God is going to help you. Ba'ashlomas hashlav hashlishi, that the third component, that it actualizes, the mitzvah actually happens, is going to work out. What happens v'shitav pula? What happens if it doesn't work out? So in the case of a person who's doing a mitzvah themselves, it's a private moment. We're not talking about the shame or the embarrassment that it didn't work, or the effort that everyone knows. I'm not talking about, a person likes to keep things safe. It's just about you. But it's also, at the end of the day, there's other people involved. Other people also have to make choices, right? If you want to give a class, other people have to choose to join the class. They have a bechira also. They have a choice also. No one's forcing anyone to do anything. So there's other people that have to make choices for this idea to be successful in any mitzvah that involves more than one person. So he says, what happens if it doesn't work out? You have no shutuf, you have no partner on the other side. No one wants to receive from you. It means if you're the one who's giving, we're talking about the person who's trying to be the mitzvah doer. And the mitzvah doer, whatever that mitzvah is, involves other people. But the other people don't want to be part of that mitzvah that you want to do for whatever reason. The outcome is not only dependent on you. You can't force things to happen. is imasa kol hamutal love. If you've done everything you have to do, and again, the Rabbeinu Bachya includes in that davening, that the davening is part of your obligation of preparation. I'm going to get back to that in a second. Is humilas tafkid go. Therefore, you have to know, and again, in an honest evaluation, calmness. Again, like the Rebbe says that to a person says that in Chassidus it says that then comes the month of Elul. One of the ideas is the city of refuge. That the Rebbe says, I want a person to be a sign to tell people miklat, guide people where they're supposed to go in Elul. So a person could say, well, I'm going to stand there as a sign. I'm not going to engage people. You have to do everything. It's everything in the first two levels means planning and doing everything in your ability. And davening is one of those things. And I'm going to add to that, but the Rebbe always said, the Rebbe used to speak about the people that feel that they're not being successful in their efforts with working with other people. The Rebbe used to say that it is a famous saying, that if you speak from the heart, it enters the heart. And so the Rebbe says you have to ask yourself in the part that's your bechira, are you speaking from the heart? Do you really mean it? Do you really care? Are you really invested in doing this mitzvah? Because that's part of it. It's not just the mouthing the words. It's the davening and really doing kol toliboy, everything that you're able to do. And still, at the end of the day, is the bitachon is the success of it is up to Hashem. The dugma, he gives an example over here. Oh, like I was saying before, a person wants to do everything, does everything in their ability to try to teach someone else Torah. Or to be a person who gives good advice. And according to his understanding of how to do it and how to advise and how to plan this interaction. As a chelik he did everything he had to do. He did all the settings that he should be able to give this class or engage others in helping them in being a good person that's going to give advice. But if you're going to have a hashpa, if you're going to have an effect on the person, again, after the Rebbe says part of the hishtadlus is it has to be words coming from the heart. Is b'shlav zeh kol she'olav lasis ulasim b'tchonim Hashem. At the end of the day, you have to have bitachon. At the end of the day, is the actual, if it's going to work or not depends on the Hashem if he wants it to work. And these things again, you have to ask yourself. Not always. It's hard. The idea that the Rabbeinu Bachya said in last week's class when we talked about part 4. That there's the effort of it, the parts that you have to do, the engaging, the bechira, that you can have bitachon, trust in Hashem, what you should be doing, because it's very clear what you should be doing. So it's not. But sometimes in what you should do is clear. How you should do is not always so clear. And I'll give you an example. Something that actually I myself just experienced yesterday. I was running to shul after my class to try to catch a certain meaning that I like to daven in if I have the opportunity, and someone called me to talk and wanted to talk about things that to get some chizuk and to get some clarity. So I of course I spoke for a few minutes, but I wanted to catch the meanings. I figured I would continue to I'll daven and then we'll get back in touch the next day. But when I was davening, I was thinking to myself, was that the right thing? There's other minyan. I live in Yerushalayim. I don't live in Seattle where there's no minyanim. So where there's only limited amount of minyanim. I live in a place where there's minyanim every half hour, every 15 minutes. I could have davened with the next minyan and spoken to the guy then. And the truth is that it was better that I didn't speak right away because I needed to first take the few pieces of information that I received to understand it better, so I could help the person or be encouraging to the person in a better way. If I would have continued the conversation, I wouldn't have had time to think about what I was listening to and really understand what was behind the phone call. So the same thing over here is we don't know exactly every detail of how we could help someone. So you do the best you can. You have to have bitachon that this is going to be done in the right way. And he says, now he goes to the next thing. And this is also not such an easy component. The Rebbe discusses this many times. This is the idea about doing a hidden mitzvah. And I think, it's not about, the hidden mitzvah part is also, you have to be careful. The Yetzer Hara, like we know, the Yetzer Hara is very, very clever. And the Yetzer Hara comes in many voices, shapes, and forms. He comes in many disguises. He either comes in with as a tzaddik, and he comes in with a long white beard. He comes in with all different. He shows himself in all different angles. He's not always coming, walking with an M16 and shouting. And so, therefore, there's the idea of an anonymous mitzvah. An anonymous mitzvah, you have to be very careful that the secrecy of the mitzvah is emes, is true. It's not another form of ego, because sometimes the secrecy of the mitzvah is also a form of ego. The highest level of the Yetzer Hara penetrates our highest because of the Eitz Das Tov Ra. Once we ate from the tree of knowledge, good and bad, that's the idea. Once we ate from the tree of knowledge, good and bad, it's almost impossible to strip ourselves from absolute, to be absolute pure. And there's always something tov and always something ra. There's always something a little bit bad in everything that we do, and always something a little bit good in everything we do, because that's the tree of knowledge. That's its effect. So even when a person wants to do a mitzvah in secrecy, you have to ask yourself: Is this an ego trip to yourself, right? That not just because people are going to find out later who did the mitzvah, but part of a feel good, or it's about the mitzvah. So first, let's see what he says inside. It says, when it comes to helping other people, is kefiyah choltai, to the best of your ability. That's an important component. Lahastir ma'astav, to hide what you're doing. You have to remember the wording over here. The person who's not important for them to know. To hide a mitzvah is okay, as long as it's going to not affect the effectiveness of the mitzvah, and the person who you want maybe to know about it has no need to know about it. If publicizing a mitzvah has no benefit, besides the fact that I'm recognized as the person who did a mitzvah, then only then could you withhold a publication. Means if there's no benefit, nothing to be gained out of publicizing the mitzvah, so then you have to make sure to do the mitzvah in secrecy, but also the secrecy has to be emes, not another form of ego. The dugma, for instance, he gives an example. Yitin tzedakah, and a person wants to give charity to someone. If you try to make sure the persons, we know in the different levels of tzedakah that are discussed by the chachamim, there's all different kind of levels. They say that the people used to walk with money bags, and the money would fall behind them, so they never saw who picked it up. So again, you have to, my wife's grandfather, who was in charge of giving out money to people for Shabbos, would send my brother-in-laws as little boys to Thursday night to ride their bikes with envelopes of cash and stick it into people's mailboxes or under their door. So because there wasn't at all anything necessary for that person to know that, and that person should be shamed that he or she has to get the money. Is you try to do the best you can to that it shouldn't be embarrassing for the person who's receiving. He says, and we're talking about, I'm going to get, this is the next section of number 6 of Bitachon is about the schar. That's a very challenging one to understand, but he says over here the idea of reward. What does it say in the first chapter of Pirkei Avot? We read Pirkei Avot now. The Mishnah is Pirkei Avot between in the summer months. And one of the Mishnahs is the beginning of chapter 1, is Atignos ish Socho. Atignos, the son of Socho, which is from the city of Socho. He was one of the leaders in the time of the Second Temple, before, of course, the house of Hillel and Shammai. And what does he say? Be a person who serves his master not for reward. So the idea of schar v'onish is a very complicated subject. And because of his teaching, some of his students left. And what did they end up doing? They ended up becoming the people that ended up destroying a lot of the traditions of Yiddishkeit, the tzedakah, with the students of Antigone Shiseichai. And what bothered them? They said, "Kluma, a person can't work without a motivation, and you can't be motivated if you don't get reward." So that's what they say. Schar mitzvah. The reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. But he's not going there yet. He says, if you want to know what Hashem appreciates, is look at how he rewards you. The reward for a hidden mitzvah is greater than the reward for a revealed mitzvah. And again, the Rebbe was very much about mefarsim ma'aseh mitzvah. That a person, the Rebbe used to say two things: that a person who always tries to hide a mitzvah ends up not doing the mitzvah, because if no one knows about it, part of what motivates you to do the mitzvah is the pressure that others are expecting you to do the mitzvah. If no one knows that you're doing the mitzvah, so if one time you don't do the mitzvah, no one knows anyway. So it's not. So that's again, the Yetzer Hara comes in finds all pressure points and all weaknesses. So if a person is publicizing that they're doing a mitzvah, so kind of the pressure is that they put on themselves helps them keep them motivated to do the mitzvah. A person who's doing a mitzvah in public, so then sometimes the Yetzer Hara is coming, it's all about your ego. Or sometimes the person's doing it hiding, the Yetzer Hara comes in and tells them, this is so you should feel good about yourself and no one else knows, you're mamish doing a mitzvah. So you have to really ask yourself, this is like I said before, Moshe Rabbeinu fell down. Why did he fall down? Because Korach said something, even though Korach said something ridiculous, right? Who made you in charge? What do you mean? Everything Moshe did, Hashem told him. Every single thing, from standing by the burning bush, when Moshe Rabbeinu was told by God, you are the person, and Moshe said, Shlach na b'yad tishlach, you have other messengers. Why are you sending me? Send Mashiach, send Aaron, right? There's different midrashim who he said to send. But he didn't want the job. But it comes Korach and says and accuses him of taking all the jobs for himself. Moshe falls on his face. To ask himself, maybe there's something there. You constantly have to reanalyze your emes, your truth in the mitzvah, but nevertheless, he says in the bigger picture of things, doing a hidden mitzvah as long as it doesn't negate, it doesn't take away any what way in help in enhancing the mitzvah or enhancing other. There's another thing that Rebbe used to talk about. When you do a mitzvah and other people know about it, it motivates others to do a mitzvah. By you staying anonymous, when people see, oh, this guy did the mitzvah, I also want to do the mitzvah. So when you say, I want to be anonymous, I don't want anyone to know, you have to ask yourself, is there absolutely no benefit in me keeping this a secret? When you come to the conclusion that there's absolutely no benefit in me keeping this a secret, and it's not about my ego, then of course you have to be quiet. That's why he says that there's and also not everyone has to know. But if some way or another you're doing the mitzvah, it's going to help someone else do a mitzvah, then the Rebbe used to say you have to be mefarsim. You have to publicize the mitzvah. But here he says, but fundamentally, the schar of doing a mitzvah hiddenly is more than a schar of doing a mitzvah in public. What if you can't? Like I said before, you can't hide it. Yiskar, then you have to be focused. As a klal shehigdamnu, the rule that we've said before. Here's an important thing. A person has this, the Jewish people are a little bit superstitious, and we have the thing that we all know called ayin hara, the evil eye. And the evil eye is not just when a person buys themselves a fancy car or a fancy watch or a fancy dress or shaitel or house or something that's about them. There's also an evil eye when it comes to a mitzvah. When a person does a mitzvah, a person does a good deed, a lot of people, and it's unfortunate, I shouldn't use the word a lot, there are maybe some people that will give an evil eye when it comes to a person who's a mitzvah. They're not ready to do the mitzvah themselves. It says there's 4 types of people when it comes to tzedakah. Right? There's a person who doesn't give at all, God forbid. There's a person who gives but doesn't want anyone else to give. What does that even mean? Because it's about you. And there's a person who's happy for everyone else to give, but they don't want to give. And there's a person who gives and wants others to give, right? This is a Pirkei Avos. This is not. This is in the Mishnah about the 4 attributes of tzedakah. So there are people that don't want others to give. I don't want you. I don't want you. I don't want to give. I don't want you to. I don't want to give, and I don't want you to give. Don't show me up. But you doing a mitzvah makes me look bad. People say that I once didn't take a Shabbos elevator. I used to not take a Shabbos elevator. I still don't. But in the building that was locked, the person said you have an obligation to take the Shabbos elevator, because if you don't take the Shabbos elevator, then it's a statement about me. That why do I take the Shabbos elevator? I disagreed with the person. Maybe he had a point. I'm saying because the Shabbos elevator is kosher. There's no question on it. I wasn't coming to make a statement about it. It was an extra. I was a young man. He was in his 80s. This is not exactly the same situation. However, that said, there are people who have an ayin hara even when it comes to good things. So therefore, he adds, Yisker is a klal shegigdamnu. We have to remember the klal, the rule. No one could hurt you. There's no positive or negative that's going to come from anyone unless Hashem wills it to be that way. So here he says clearly that if there's a nezek, if there's damage done, a person may think there's damage done because there's a my mitzvah has been publicized, that I'm scared of Ayin Hara, I'm scared of other things. You have to know that just like in anything else, that we have trust. We have to have trust that nothing happens to the person that God didn't want it to happen. Even the effect of publicizing a mitzvah that you're scared it may be damaging is up to Hashem. Although you have to do things. I remember again when the Rebbe published a very famous Hasidic work in the 70s, in the 1970s, called Tafresh Ayin Beis. It was a work, one of the deepest works of Hasidic philosophy that was not published. It was just passed between people, copies of typeset, and there was mistakes, and it was only typeset. Only certain people had the typeset copies, and they would borrow it, but it wasn't published. And the Rebbe wanted to publish it. The Rebbe spoke about this, that there's sometimes you have to be careful when you do a mitzvah that there's negative energy, and therefore the Rebbe said that everyone should do it. It should be a communal work. So you have, even though there is what to be concerned about sometimes, but there's ways to get around it. You see, and let me read the commentary what he says about this idea, because it's a complicated idea in Judaism. It says, Alav Liska, the person must remember, Shekol Nezek, any benefit, any damage, oitayelis or benefit, means both sides, whether you're going to get damage or benefit. Shegi Alav, that's going to come to the person from doing a mitzvah, is the ratio down, is Mikoiram, its source is Bashem Ubirtani. God wanted it at the end of the day to be that way. And if something comes to you from positive or negative, it's that God wanted it to happen. Even if other people are the reason, it causes good things or bad things to happen because you publicized you did a mitzvah. And therefore, at the end of the day, fundamentally, you cannot be concerned with people's response to you doing a mitzvah. And therefore you could be in a total absolute calm, like in anything in Bitachon, in trust. Have a free heart. And you have nothing to be concerned about what people will say or do because you did a mitzvah. So here he says something else. So a person may want to do a mitzvah in hiding, so there shouldn't be an Ayin Hara, there shouldn't be a negative force. And I'll tell you something that another story of the Rebbe that happened to my grandfather. My grandfather gave, I think the story is, he gave a large donation. He wanted to give a large donation, and the Rebbe said, "You're not concerned with an Ayin Hara." The Rebbe asked him that. You're not concerned with the Ayin Hara that is going to be about you giving such a large donation that may affect kind of kitrogim, that awaken voices from the Satan, from the evil side. And my grandfather answered the Rebbe, he's not concerned. He told the Rebbe he doesn't feel the Satan has any, the Satan has any kind of shlita, has any rule over him. But we see that there's a concept we have to be concerned. But the Rabbeinu Bachya says the bottom line, fundamentally, that shouldn't stop you from doing something. You have to do, and even if you have to publicize what you're doing, and you may be scared that people are going to talk and people are going to say things, and it's going to there'll be a bad outcome or good outcome. That's not your concern. You have to have trust. Hashem is going to make it happen the way it should happen. And here he says like this: if Hashem wills it so, La says toiva, to do a favor. You have to recognize that God is literally gifting you the opportunity to do a mitzvah. I was in a shul once near Tishrei. The first time I heard it, I was young, I was just married. I was in a shul once, Tishrei, and they were selling mitzvahs. They were selling the opportunity, the ideas that people could sponsor different things at the synagogue on the holiday. And the gabbai who got up there, I was, I think in Florida, the gabbai got up there, he the first time I heard the word opportunity, means used in such a thing. There's so many opportunities for us to do when it comes to doing mitzvahs and shul. But he said it, he meant it. It's an opportunity. And so when you do a mitzvah, you have to view it as an opportunity. Not that God owes you. It's surely not that the person owes you. But God gifted you an opportunity to do a mitzvah. Especially if the mitzvah comes out and it's full. And even though you may get praise, don't feel an inner joy because of the praise. Yeah, the praise. This is not, it sounds like, obvious stuff. It's far from obvious. It's very hard to actualize and to live up to these expectations, to have no motivation, to not want to be a leader. All the things he's mentioning over here when it comes to doing a mitzvah, even the hidden mitzvah that you do a hidden mitzvah, or you do a revealed mitzvah, or if you don't want it to be revealed, or if it should be revealed, or you don't want it to be revealed, dafka. Rabbi Deitch once told me, my teacher once told me, he said that the Rebbe in the years of communism went to a certain chassid, a chassid, and the chassid himself told the story to Rabbi Deitch. We're talking about a person who called himself a chassid. And the Rebbe said to him, those days when to have matzah in Russia, in the Soviet Union was forbidden, or somewhere or another was forbidden, and the Rebbe had some sort of underground program to get matzah to the Jewish communities in Russia. The Rebbe, obviously, it costs a lot of money. When it's an operation, it costs more money if it's a hidden operation. The Rebbe went to this chassid, who was obviously a wealthy man, and asked that chassid to sponsor the matzahs for Pesach. And the Rebbe, this chassid actually told the Rebbe these words. He told to the Rebbe, no one's going to know about it. If I do a big donation somewhere, I can't, it's literally no one can know about it. If the Russians find out about it, they're going to arrest anyone. So it literally had to be a total hidden operation. And the chassid tells the Rebbe that no one's going to know about it if I do this mitzvah. So, and the chassid said that the Rebbe didn't tell him what's the matter with you. What kind of chassid are you that you need to be known? The Rebbe actually promised him, don't worry, you're going to get so much brachas from God for doing it that, it's going to be worth the sacrifice, the publication, the covet, the recognition for the mitzvah because of the benefits you're going to get. And the person said, I got the benefits. He was telling the story about what happened to him. So he says, he says, and my point is, it's not easy. What Rabbeinu Bachya says, when we read it, it sounds easy. It's not easy. It's not easy for a person to have zero ego, zero motivation, it's how hard is it for a person to step aside when you realize you're not the person now, no longer the person for running things. These are not easy things to expect of a person. But he says, don't take pride in what people are praising you. And don't expect them to respect you. He uses a fantastic word here. You want zechichus hadas. You want pure, zachuch means purity. You want mamish, pure connection, das is connection to the ma'isa that you're doing. Eliminate any agenda. Eliminate any personal interest in the mitzvah. It's liskar vel Hashem. This is why you're here. And this is why Hashem blessed you to be able to do the mitzvah and view the mitzvah as such an opportunity that God gave you. Baruch Hashem that I was able to do the mitzvah. He says also like this. He says like this. He says another thing, that a person may lose. You could lose your schar if you take personal benefit from it, right? If you benefit from mitzvah, whether the benefit is sometimes even you have monetary benefit. People want to do business with people who are about stock, right? Your name gets famous. People know who you are. Oh, who's that person? What do you mean that person is a big donor to the show? So it helps you personally. So never mind that. But even if it doesn't help you financially or in dollars and cents, but it helps you in covet, people respect you, people open the door for you, you get an aliyah more often. So God says, second, you already collected on your mitzvah. You collected on your mitzvah in this world, right? You got covet, you got recognition, you felt good, you had simcha inside. So again, he's pushing that takes away from the schar. Again, we have schar mitzvah. We have to understand that's a very complicated topic on its own, which we'll get into in the next piece. And I will explain it Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach. So this completes section 5 about doing mitzvah with others. I'm just going to read the sikum and open up for anyone if anyone has any questions. And next week, Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach, we're going to start the next one, which talks about the idea of schar, about how a person has to view rewards in this world and view reward in the next world. The Rabbeinu Bachya goes into it, that schar va'onesh, reward and punishment in this world is so hard because it's connected to what we understand is what we want, right? If imagine you get transported back to your being 2 years old, and the reward is a candy, and then you get quickly taken back to your adulthood life. and candy is not going to cut it at all. You're not interested in the candy. You don't even eat candy anymore. So the same thing. The soul in this world, the neshama in this world, is the reward that we want. Whether it's that we should have certain things that are basics like shidduchim, health, finances, nachas. There's a lot of things that we want Hashem to bless us that are worldly things. This whole week's parsha talks about Baruch all the blessings and the curses we have in this week's parsha, right? So, but that's the way we see things from this world. But if you go back, when the soul goes to a higher place, the value of things that we put in this world don't even matter to the soul in the higher world. So how do we understand schar va'onish, reward and punishment? And the negative things that today may not be so negative are very negative to the soul in heaven. Okay, but that we'll get to next week. So he says the sikum b'dvarim, to make a summary of this idea of this section, which is doing a mitzvah with others, where we said is basically to break it down like this. When it comes to spirituality and performing a mitzvah, we have to separate clearly the obligations when it comes to mitzvah. You cannot be bitachon. You have to be engaging very much, and like we said in section 4 and 5, in how you do the mitzvah. When it comes to ruchni, it's and then how it actually works out. So all the efforts and focus and desire and planning that you have to do. If it's going to be successful after you've done everything, and everything means taka everything, that's up to Hashem. As a bachira b'toiv, to make the good choices. To be motivated, and the planning. HaKadosh Baruch Hu writes, God wants you to do that. You have to make the planning. You have to be motivated. Create the motivation. Be motivated. But that we have to do. And the actualizing of the mitzvah, and interaction is not only up to us. There's outside conditions that condition if it's going to be successful, whether that condition is just between Hashem or whether that condition manifests in other people not being part of your plan. And this week we learned about there's other people that are involved and they may not make the choices that for whatever reason. It doesn't mean they're making the wrong choices. That's also part of it. It means a person says, if what I'm doing is right, if what I'm doing the shtadlis, I'm doing everything I should be doing, I made the right choices, and I have bitachon in Hashem, obviously the other person is making the wrong choice. Right? We can't be both be making the right choice. If we need two people to do mitzvah, and I done everything, and now I have bitachon in Hashem that should be successful. So obviously my choice is right. The question is just, and my planning was right, or up to a point. The question is just, if Hashem is going to want it to work out. What happens about the other person? So when there's no other person involved, whatever, you could say Hashem didn't want it for reasons we don't understand. But when there's the other person involved, can you say simultaneously that I made the right choice and that other person made the right choice? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. That what may you had to do what you had to do, and that was your choice. But from the other person had to make a different choice, even though that person's choice affected your choice. That's also a hard thing to understand. So he says, and so where's the test here? The test is in that thing. The test is that in accepting even that idea, that both of you can make a right choice, and nevertheless, for whatever reason, Hashem wanted you to make your choice, even though the other person, Hashem wanted to make that other choice, and the choice that person made was right, is you have to have bitachon in that. That's trust, because it's beyond our comprehension. God tests us in what we have to do. Hashem He gives us free choice. And God gives us the opportunity to make the right choices. And doing the mitzvahs. The dugma, when it comes to, he says like this, he gives an example. In teaching our children. You can't say education, well, God has to take care of my kids' education. You have to make sure you send your kids to good school. How you go about here, I'm not sure why he mentions zivug. He says, how you go about finding shidduch is not just bitachon. What efforts have you done properly? It's a mitzvah to get married, right? So if it's a mitzvah to get married, what have you done to actualize that mitzvah? Being biased Israel, to build a house in Israel. So then you have a test to do your part. And then there's the part that affects the other, that's connected to the other person. And that finishes chapter 4 of section 5. And next week we'll start section 6. Any questions? Guess not. Well, I guess it's self-understood. Laila Tov, everyone, and a good Shabbos.